Hey there, welcome to Sleepy History Secrets, the channel where history gets drunk but the voice stays calm. Tonight we're stepping inside the medieval tavern, that glorious contradiction where poverty, gossip and questionable hygiene met for a quiet drink that was anything but quiet. It's a place where you could buy ale, lose your dignity and learn all the town secrets before supper. And if you were lucky, you'd wake up only slightly robbed. But before you settle in and get cozy, please take a quiet moment to like the video or subscribe, only if you truly enjoy falling asleep to humanity's bad decisions. And when you're ready, drop a comment telling us where you're listening from and what time it is right now. It's strangely comforting to know how many of us are awake at the wrong hour, each in our own little corner of history. Now dim the lights, maybe let a fan hum softly in the background, and imagine the smell of wood smoke, spilled ale and damp wool drifting toward you. The year is somewhere around 1300 and something. The road is muddy, your boots are soaked, and civilization, such as it is, lies just beyond the next flicker of firelight. If your mind drifts, that's perfectly fine. We'll still be here, quietly unfolding the story. You start on a road that isn't so much a road as it is a long argument between mud and gravity. Each step sounds like the world sighing in resignation. Your boots cling to the ground in that special medieval way, half suction, half betrayal. The rain has stopped, but the air still carries the damp honesty of a season that never really dries. Somewhere ahead there's laughter, not the clean, polite kind. The kind that suggests someone just fell off a stool and nobody helped them up. You follow it, not because you trust it, but because it's the only thing that sounds alive. The smell arrives before the building does, a dense perfume of ale, horse, wet wool, and mild despair. If you could bottle it, you could sell it to historians under the label authentic experience. The structure itself leans into the wind like it gave up centuries ago. Timber frame, thatched roof, smoke curling through holes that may or may not be intentional. The sign above the door, if that's what it is, looks like someone once tried to paint a boar, then got distracted by death. This, allegedly, is the tavern, a word that once meant wine house, though you will find very little wine and even less house. Inside there's warmth, or at least a temperature that's different from outside. A faint orange light spills through gaps in the shutters, flickering like a secret you haven't been invited to hear. You pause at the door. Etiquette demands you wipe your boots, but etiquette, like most good ideas, hasn't been invented here yet. So you push the door open, and the night breathes out, smoke, laughter, and a kind of human chaos that feels almost holy. The first thing that hits you is the heat. It's not cozy, it's aggressive. A fire roars in the open hearth, sending smoke, warmth, and a light coating of soot to everyone equally. Fairness, at last. Your eyes sting as they adjust and the room resolves itself. A long wooden table sagging under mugs, elbows and arguments. A dog asleep under a bench. A man asleep on top of one. No one looks clean. No one looks unhappy either. Someone shouts, someone laughs, and a mug crashes to the floor with the sound of a small tragedy. No one turns to look. In here, that's just punctuation. You edge toward the bar, though bar might be generous. It's more a plank pretending to have structure, supported by barrels that groan like they're aware of their purpose. Behind it stands the tavern keeper, a woman built entirely out of endurance and mild disappointment. She's the unofficial mayor, judge, accountant and security system of this establishment. Her expression suggests she's seen every human emotion and found all of them inconvenient. You ask for ale. You don't need to specify which kind, there's only one kind. She fills a mug from a wooden cask that looks older than morality. The liquid is cloudy, warm and alive in a way modern drinks rarely are. You take a sip. It tastes like someone accidentally invented survival. This is small beer, the medieval hydration plan. Safer than water, cheaper than wine, and nutritious if you believe in optimism. Children drink it, monks drink it, and apparently so do you now. Congratulations, You've joined the entire population of Europe. Around you, the conversation hums at a pitch somewhere between storytelling and shouting. A farmer explains how his cow can predict rain. A soldier claims he once met a dragon that looks suspiciously like a large dog. Someone near the fire is playing a fiddle badly enough to be historically accurate, and through it all, the smell of yeast, smoke and humanity weaves together into something oddly comforting, like being inside a loaf of bread that's reconsidering its life choices. Outside, the rain starts again, but the door stays closed. Here, the world shrinks to a single flickering room, half laughter, half steam. You notice how everyone sits close, not out of friendship but out of physics. Warmth is communal. Space is theoretical. For the first time in hours, you realise you're warm, not clean, not dry, but undeniably, unmistakably warm. It feels like victory, the kind measured in degrees and seconds. The tavern keeper eyes you over the rim of her mug. She doesn't ask your name. She doesn't need to. Everyone who walks through that door is just another story she'll have to clean up later. You glance at the hearth. The fire spits once, sending a halo of sparks into the smoky air. They rise, fade, and vanish into the dark beams above. You watch them until your vision blurs slightly, from the heat, from the ale, or from the slow realization that this, somehow, is what passes for comfort. Outside, the rain hisses against the thatch. Inside, someone starts a song with no tune and too much enthusiasm. You exhale, quietly, and let the sound wash over you. Anyway, welcome to the tavern. You'll be here a while. The first real breath you take inside the tavern feels like an act of bravery. It's heavy, sweet, and vaguely edible. The air seems to cling to you, equal parts smoke, steam, and nostalgia for cleaner times. Every breath tastes like it's been pre-owned. Still, it's warm. And in medieval Europe, warmth forgave a lot. The light, if you can call it that, comes from a row of tallow candles melting at various speeds of regret. They sputter in the draughts that sneak through the door cracks, spilling a dull orange glow across the uneven tables and the collection of humanity attached to them. Every flame has its own rhythm, and together they flicker like a choir that hasn't rehearsed. The walls are dark, glazed with soot, smoke, and history's fingerprints. Low beams force everyone to duck at least once, a sort of initiation ritual that leaves you mildly concussed but socially accepted. Above, the ceiling is a maze of rafters strung with drying herbs, old pots, and at least one chicken that seems to be rethinking its life choices. If it falls, that's dinner, or a story. You slide onto a bench near the fire. It's polished smooth by centuries of discomfort. Someone's elbow makes a half-hearted attempt at claiming space. You respond with a nod, the universal language of "please don't stab me." A mug clinks nearby. A laugh bursts, then fades like a dying ember. You realise the tavern hums, not from noise exactly, but from being alive in too small a room. To your left, a pair of traders haggle loudly over something that might be wool, or possibly an argument about wool. They slap the table to emphasise points, sending waves through the ale like medieval tectonics. Across from them, a boy no older than 12 carries another tray of mugs with the solemn dignity of someone holding relics. He probably brewed half of it this morning. In a few years, he'll drink like the rest. The fireplace dominates the room, a stone pit filled with wood that refuses to burn quietly. It spits, cracks, and fills the air with a gentle haze that blurs every edge. Smoke curls upward, looking for escape and finding none. There's no chimney, just a hole in the roof, or possibly divine ventilation. The scent of pine resin, burnt bread, and damp shoes settles into your clothes like a long-term relationship. It's not beautiful, but it's functional. That was the general theme of medieval architecture. Comfort optional, purpose mandatory. At the far end, someone plays a stringed instrument that might once have been a lute. It's missing 2 strings and all its pride. He sings anyway, and the crowd rewards him with mild attention and heavy noise. The melody weaves through the room, dodging coughs, clinks, and the occasional bark from the dog beneath the table. It's strangely hypnotic, music that knows it isn't good, but performs out of obligation to existence. You glance toward the windows, or rather the vague areas where windows should be. They're covered with oiled parchment instead of glass, letting in the faintest suggestion of moonlight. Outside, rain whispers against the thatch. Inside, the tavern glows like a lantern that has opinions about your hygiene. The tavern keeper moves through the crowd like a force of nature. She carries a pitcher in one hand, authority in the other. Her dress is plain, her tone not. When she speaks, people listen, or at least pretend to. She doesn't smile, because she doesn't need to. Owning the only fire, food, and alcohol within walking distance is charisma enough. Her ladle clangs against mugs in a rhythm that could start a religion. A small cat darts between boots, looking for warmth or spilled gravy, whichever appears first. It moves with the quiet confidence of an employee. No one kicks it. They know better. The soundscape builds slowly. Crackling fire, low conversation, wet wool steaming, the clatter of wooden mugs, and the occasional human sneeze that doubles as percussion. It's chaotic, but there's a rhythm to it. Every tavern has its own beat, and this one sounds like exhaustion set to music. Someone behind you mutters about the price of ale rising again. Someone else replies that everything's getting expensive since the last plague. They both nod as though they've solved economics. No one mentions how the ale tastes, because the point isn't the taste, it's the warmth and the forgetting. On the wall near the door hangs a small parchment with official-looking scribbles. It's the king's ale tax, the medieval equivalent of fine print no one reads. Below it, in larger handwriting, someone has written, "Don't steal the mugs. Humanity's first customer service notice." In a corner, 2 men roll dice on the table, their faces lit by candlelight and bad intentions. Each throw is met with cheers, curses, or the kind of silence that means money just changed hands. Dice were banned last year, which means business has never been better. A priest supposedly fined anyone caught gambling. He was last seen playing for penance. Somewhere above the noise, a voice calls out, "Close the shutters, the spirits are out tonight." The crowd laughs, not kindly, but knowingly. Everyone here believes a little in ghosts, just enough to explain whatever they can't afford to fix. A gust of wind presses against the door, the candles waver, and for a brief moment the room seems to exhale together. Then someone burps, and the spell breaks. You lean back, hands warming around the mug. The ale tastes rough, like it remembers the field it came from. But it's drinkable, which in medieval terms counts as luxury. You feel the slow weight of comfort settle in. Not joy, not safety, but that quiet middle ground called survival. Across the room, a man begins telling a story about the last traveller who came through here. Something about a cursed road and an even more cursed goose. The details don't matter. The laughter does. Every tale ends the same way, with someone laughing, someone swearing, and someone falling asleep mid-sentence. You realise you've been smiling, the small, tired kind that requires no commitment. It's the first time in days you've felt almost human again. The air may be thick enough to chew, but somehow it feels like home. Outside, the rain continues. Inside, someone raises a mug and shouts, something that could be a toast or a complaint. It doesn't matter. Everyone drinks anyway. Welcome to the night shift of history, where civilization took a break and called it leisure. If you stay still long enough in a medieval tavern, the room starts to arrange itself, not neatly, just inevitably. It's less a floor plan, and more an argument that somehow holds shape. Every object here exists because it failed to escape. The main table stretches diagonally across the room like it fell there and was too tired to move. Around it, men, women, and things pretending to be furniture. Benches sag, stools wobble, and every surface gleams with a layer of spilled history. If you look down, the floor looks back. It's packed dirt, but after a few hundred nights of ale and regret, it's achieved the consistency of pudding with trust issues. Your boots sink slightly, as if the ground disapproves of you personally. To your right, barrels form a proud little mountain of potential bad decisions, each one labelled in chalk by someone who clearly couldn't spell after testing the contents. Behind them, a shelf bows under the weight of mugs, jugs, and ambitions that will not survive the evening. Every few minutes, the tavern keeper thumps a barrel and listens like a physician checking for vital signs. If it echoes hollow, she frowns, not from sadness, but from mathematics. The hearth dominates the far wall, its fire burning with the stubbornness of a creature that resents being fed. It smokes more than it shines. The room breathes with it. Inhale soot. Exhale laughter. A dog lies dangerously close to the flames, snoring like a small bellows. No one moves him. In here, dogs rank slightly below clergy but above poets. You can tell everything about the tavern by the noise. It doesn't rise or fall, it just exists, constant, layered, alive. Voices overlap like waves, mugs clink like punctuation, and in the background someone hums a tune they've forgotten halfway through. Occasionally a chair screeches across the floor to announce that another conversation has turned into a debate. Medieval acoustics were mostly wood, ale, and emotion. The tavern keeper rules from behind her plank of authority, the bar in name only. It sags in the middle like it shares her exhaustion. Every coin, jug, and elbow that lands on it adds to its impressive record of survival. She moves with precision, pouring ale with one hand while disciplining two patrons with the other. Her ladle doubles as a measuring cup, a weapon, and a religious symbol for those who fear it. No one challenges her authority. Even the fire seems to lean away when she passes. Every so often she wipes the counter with a rag that's seen things. It doesn't clean, it redistributes. But that's fine. Cleanliness in a tavern is like silence in a monastery. Technically admirable, but suspicious. She keeps an abacus of tabs in her head and remembers every unpaid debt down to the last spoon. You get the feeling she could recite every insult, accident, and broken mug since the Black Death, and still have room for tomorrow's gossip. Across the room, a farmer in a wool cap argues with gravity and loses. He's trying to explain crop rotation to a soldier who clearly believes potatoes are sorcery. They're both shouting in the same language but entirely different worlds. Beside them, a bard tunes a lute that's mostly wishful thinking. He plucks one string, nods as though it's profound, then plucks another that immediately breaks. The crowd applauds, mostly because it's over. A monk sits near the corner, halfway through a sermon no one asked for. He's preaching about moderation while quietly refilling his own mug. It's a solid performance, theological multitasking at its finest. Every tavern has one, the holy man who visits for the people and leaves for repentance. He'll be back next week with stronger convictions and weaker coin. You start to notice how every noise carries meaning. The soft slap of a hand on wood, a greeting or a warning. The low rumble of laughter, safety for now. The sharp crack of ceramic, tension, briefly acknowledged, soon forgiven. The rhythm feels older than speech. Humanity's first orchestra, tuned to the key of survival. The tavern smells like a biography, ale, sweat, smoke, and ambition. Every inhale tells you what happened here last night and possibly last century. The scent clings to your hair, your clothes, your identity. Tomorrow, when you walk outside, the world will know exactly where you've been. You might call it shame. History calls it documentation. The bard begins again, this time with lyrics about a fisherman and a goat. No one listens, but everyone hears him. That's the secret. Tavern stories aren't for meaning. They're for company. Words float like steam, carrying warmth without consequence. You wonder how many promises have been made in this room and how few survive the morning. Probably none. That's tradition. The tavern keeper bangs her ladle against a barrel. Silence ripples out like an obedient rumour. "Anyone not paying," she says, or maybe doesn't say because her eyes say it for her, "will wash the floor." Half the room immediately remembers that their money's in another pocket. She sighs. It's the sigh of a woman who's seen enough unpaid tabs to fund a small cathedral. Outside, the wind presses against the shutters, demanding entry. The door shakes, the candles flicker, and for a heartbeat everyone pauses. Then the laughter resumes, louder, as if to prove they're not afraid of weather or fate. The fire snaps, triumphant. You realise that this is what the tavern truly is, a rebellion against silence, cold and consequence, a temporary kingdom built entirely out of noise and necessity. The dog stirs, the bard loses another string, someone sneezes into eternity. And over it all the tavern keeper watches, calm, calculating, possibly divine. When her eyes meet yours, you feel judged, measured, and immediately found owing. She nods toward an empty table near the back, as if assigning you a destiny. You nod back because you don't really have a choice. No one refuses a seat in her domain. As you settle in, the mug beside you wobbles from another cheer. The ale inside glows faintly in the candlelight, thick and alive, and for a moment you understand why people come here. Not for drink, not for food, but for the strange comfort of being surrounded by chaos that somehow keeps existing. It's noisy, smoky, and slightly terrifying, but compared to the world outside, it almost feels civilized. Anyway, she notices you, and that's where the night truly begins. You can always tell who owns a tavern. It's not the one shouting, it's the one who doesn't need to. The tavern keeper moves like she invented gravity and only shares it out of pity. She doesn't hurry, she circulates. The crowd parts for her without thinking, the way a herd does when thunder walks by. No crown, no sceptre, just a wooden ladle, an iron will, and a stare that could curdle milk at 20 paces. Her name doesn't matter. No one uses it. She's just her, the keeper, the unofficial mayor of noise, the person who can silence an entire room with a single raised eyebrow and start it again with one word: next. She's dressed in layers of linen and fatigue, her sleeves rolled high, her hands reddened from years of boiling stew, lifting barrels and occasionally enforcing justice with household utensils. When she wipes the counter, she does it like a warning. Every motion says, "I clean because I allow it, not because it matters." The heat in the room belongs to her too. The fire burns because she told it to. When it hisses, she mutters something in a tone that sounds suspiciously like a threat. The hearth crackles obediently. Even the smoke seems to change direction when she glares at it. Behind her, shelves line the wall, bottles, jugs, a few unlabelled mysteries. She knows which is which by instinct and by smell. Ale, cider, mead, vinegar, all part of the same family. One is for drinking, one is for cleaning, and the others are for lessons. A drunk at the corner table tries to negotiate a discount. He slurs something about loyalty. She answers by placing her hand flat on the bar. The sound it makes isn't loud, but it's final. In the same moment, two nearby patrons suddenly remember errands outside. Her reputation does the rest. You notice the rhythm of her night. Pour, wipe, scold, repeat. Each act measured, ritualistic, oddly graceful. Every tavern keeper is part accountant, part therapist, part war general. She keeps track of tabs, arguments, and which stool leg is about to give out. Her eyes never stop moving. They drift over every coin, every suspicious glance, every whisper that sounds too conspiratorial for comfort. She knows before the brawl begins, and she knows exactly where it will end. Near the fire, the bard hits another wrong note. She doesn't even look up. "Play softer," she says, and he does. It's less an order than a law of physics. A group of farmers stumble in, bringing with them half a field's worth of mud. She nods once, already calculating how much straw she'll need to soak it by morning. They crowd around the hearth, steaming like a herd of misplaced livestock. She pours their ale before they ask. It's not kindness, it's strategy. Keep them busy, chewing and swallowing, fewer words, fewer fights. A mug tips over, it hits the floor, rolls, and stops at her feet. The room goes quiet. She bends, picks it up and inspects it. It's intact. She nods, sets it back on the counter, and says nothing. The silence holds for 3 long heartbeats. Then, as if blessed, the tavern breathes again. She's seen this all before. The same faces with different names, the same songs, the same problems, the same optimism that never survives till morning. If history is written by kings, it's edited by tavern keepers, one mug at a time. At her side sits a little wooden box locked. Inside, the evening's coins, the week's debts, and the occasional secret. People pay her not just for ale, but for silence. When she nods, she's filing information into some invisible ledger. Who owes whom? Who argued with what? Who might not come back next week? She glances at you again. It's not friendliness. It's curiosity with professional boundaries. You can almost see her evaluating you like a new ingredient. Too soft, too sober, possibly trouble, definitely paying. She refills your mug before it's empty. That's her way of saying welcome, or possibly you look like you'll need it. The heat presses against your back. Your clothes stick. Every surface seems slightly alive with warmth, like the tavern itself has a pulse. You wipe condensation from your mug, but it comes back instantly, beading along the rim in defiance of physics and common decency. You think about moving closer to the window, then remember, windows mean drafts, and drafts mean regret. You stay where you are. Comfort is always a negotiation here. Near the door, a new customer steps in. A tall figure wrapped in a hood, face hidden, the air following them colder than before. No one speaks, but everyone notices. The tavern keeper doesn't flinch. She just tilts her head slightly, the way a hawk does before deciding whether to strike. The stranger nods, orders quietly, pays in full coin. Her ladle lowers, respect established. The room exhales. You start to understand the balance she maintains. Too much noise and someone bleeds. Too much silence and someone schemes. Her task isn't to run a business. It's to keep civilization barely functional between drinks. And she does it without thanks, without rest, without ever losing the faint, exhausted smile that says, "Yes, I've already cleaned this mess yesterday and I'll do it again tomorrow." Her world is measured in touch. The rough wood beneath her hands, the weight of mugs, the sting of spilled ale on cracked skin. She's lived enough nights like this to know the temperature of chaos by feel alone. When things start to go wrong, the air changes. It thickens, ripples, waits. She can read it. And tonight she's already watching the corner where 2 men have started a game of dice, with more enthusiasm than skill. You sip slowly, the heat crawling into your bones. It's not pleasant, but it's honest. In a world built on mud and faith, honesty feels almost luxurious. The tavern keeper catches your eye again. Her expression softens, not much, but enough to pass for hospitality. "You'll want food soon," she says, as though predicting the future, which, in a way, she does nightly. Outside, the wind moans against the shutters. Inside, the fire answers. It's a duet older than language. She pours one last round, straightens the counter, and wipes the same circle of wood she's wiped 1,000 times before. You realise that the tavern runs not because of its patrons, but because she wills it to. When she sleeps, if she ever does, the walls themselves must sigh in relief, anyway. She turns away to stir the pot of stew simmering near the fire, and for the first time tonight the tavern smells almost kind. Something earthy, smoky, edible. It's not comfort exactly, just proof that someone still remembers how to make it. You take another sip. It's warm, thick, and tastes like someone described beer to a loaf of bread, and the bread said, "I'll try my best." This is ale, the medieval hydration plan, national pastime, and accidental food group. No one really knows when it was brewed first. Probably around the same time humans realised water kills you faster than alcohol does. Medieval water wasn't unsafe, it was adventurous. It came flavoured with whatever the cows, pigs, or townspeople upstream had contributed that week. So, people did the sensible thing. They replaced it with something slightly poisonous but far more reliable. Ale wasn't a luxury, it was life insurance. Even children drank it, not because medieval parents were irresponsible, but because it was boiled, fermented, and only mildly hallucinogenic if you skipped breakfast. A monk once called it liquid bread, which is a poetic way of saying, we gave up, and this is what survival tastes like. The brew itself was a matter of geography and luck. You took grain, barley if you were civilized, wheat if you were rich, oats if you were desperate, soaked it, mashed it, boiled it, and prayed. Then you added yeast, though no one really knew what yeast was. They just referred to it as God's dust, or that frothy miracle that sometimes happens. Fermentation wasn't science. It was a rumour that worked often enough to keep repeating. The result, a cloudy, low-alcohol concoction that could be scooped, not poured. If you left it long enough, it grew character. If you left it longer, it grew relatives. And yet people lined up for it daily. Because when your options are dysentery or mild dizziness, dizziness wins every time. Taverns like this one brewed their own. In the back room, a space half kitchen, half alchemy lab, you'd find wooden vats bubbling like a potion that got bored halfway through. Steam rose through gaps in the ceiling, carrying the smell of warm bread, sour grain, and ambition. The air tasted like breakfast that went wrong but still showed up to work. The tavern keeper keeps her eye on the barrels the way a priest watches a congregation. She knows which ones are faithful, which ones are sinners, and which one might explode without proper supervision. Every night she taps a new cask with the reverence of a surgeon and the precision of someone who knows what happens if she doesn't. The sound of that first pour, hollow, foamy, alive, is the medieval equivalent of a starting bell. Conversation stirs, laughter follows, civilization continues. You swirl your mug, there's sediment at the bottom. That's normal. It's flavour, texture, and possibly nutrition. The average pint contains enough calories to power a small argument. It's not a drink, it's a lifestyle choice. Of course, quality varied wildly. Monasteries brewed the best ale, clean, balanced, divine. Peasants brewed something closer to survival fluid. The difference was cleanliness, ingredients, and whether rats were considered part of the process or the audience. Taverns existed somewhere in the middle, slightly holy, mostly hopeful. The smell alone could sober a saint. Medieval drinkers didn't measure alcohol by percentage, they measured it by memory loss. If you remembered your name the next morning, it was small beer. If you remembered someone else's name, it was strong. If you remembered nothing at all, congratulations, you just funded the local church repairs. The ale came in stages. Small beer for breakfast, barely fermented, thin as tea, but safe enough for toddlers. Then mild ale for daily labour, thick and filling, good for morale. And finally, strong ale, reserved for feast days, funerals, and poor decision-making. Each batch was reused, watered, and reinvented until it developed what brewers called character. Modern historians call it bacteria. You take another sip and feel the faint warmth crawl through your chest. It's not comforting exactly, but it's steady, like a hand on your shoulder that smells faintly of yeast. The taste is earthy, slightly sour, and unapologetically honest. Nothing filtered, nothing refined. Every flavour tells a story: field, fire, barrel, and human error. Across the room, the bard raises his mug and announces a toast to the brewer's blessing. No one listens, but everyone drinks anyway. That's the rule. Never waste a toast, even if it's incomprehensible. Ale makes democracy possible, at least until the third round, when it removes the concept of government entirely. The smell of brewing clings to everything: the damp floor, the bark of the mugs, even the dog's fur. It's less an aroma, more an atmosphere. Every tavern in Europe shares this scent, somewhere between a bakery and a confession booth. The tavern keeper pours for a soldier at the bar. He downs it in one gulp, slams the mug, and sighs the sigh of a man who has just remembered every bad decision he's ever made. She nods, refills it, and he starts the cycle again. Economy, medieval edition. Not all ale was local. Merchants sometimes brought exotic brews flavoured with herbs, honey, or even fruit, a luxury so unnecessary that it immediately became fashionable. Foreign ale was a sign of wealth and poor judgment. Most people preferred their beer like their weather, familiar, murky, and unavoidable. Of course, drink carried danger. Too much ale and you risked fines, brawls, or worse, poetry. Drunk men quoted scripture, confessed to imaginary crimes, and occasionally challenged livestock to duels. Tavern keepers were expected to manage this chaos diplomatically. If diplomacy failed, the ladle did the talking. You glance around. The fire glows low and red, reflected in 100 uneven mugs. Each one catches the light differently, like tiny suns orbiting the same smoky galaxy. It's hypnotic, warm, and faintly tragic. You realise that for most people here, this is the closest they'll ever come to heaven. A full mug, a hot fire, and the illusion that tomorrow will wait its turn. You finish your drink. At the bottom lies a pale swirl of sediment, a reminder that history never fully settles. You set the mug down and the wood hums softly under your hand. Somewhere behind you, a new barrel is tapped, and the room erupts in quiet approval, a sound like laughter pretending to be gratitude. Anyway, welcome to the ale that time forgot. Warm, cloudy, slightly alive, and somehow exactly what everyone needs. After a few mugs of ale, your taste buds grow adventurous. They start whispering, what else is there? The answer, as always in medieval life, is something stronger and vaguely dangerous. The tavern keeper raises an eyebrow when you ask. Not judgment, just acknowledgement. She reaches under the counter and produces a clay jug with no label, which is history's way of saying, proceed at your own risk. She pours you a cup of mead, honey wine, the drink of heroes, poets, and people who can't afford beer but have a beehive and bad ideas. It shines gold in the firelight, thick as syrup and about as discreet. You take a sip. It's sweet, floral, and deceptively polite. Then, somewhere near your ribs, it changes its mind. Warmth rushes upward like a sermon on bad behaviour. Mead is older than civilization, and only slightly less organised. People have been mixing honey and water for millennia, not out of curiosity but necessity. Honey doesn't spoil, and boredom eventually demands experimentation. In medieval times, mead was the drink of the mildly successful. Peasants drank ale, nobles drank wine. Mead existed in the comfortable middle, the beverage equivalent of a shrug that cost money. Its strength varied. A weak mead might leave you cheerful and sentimental. A strong one could make you see angels, or at least talk to goats with unnecessary confidence. Monks made the best batches, holy honey for unholy evenings. They infused it with herbs, spices, and guilt. The result was a drink that could bless you and ruin your posture simultaneously. The tavern keeper warns you quietly, drink it. Slow. It forgives no one. You nod, already forgetting that advice halfway through your next swallow. She smirks. She's seen this performance before. Across the room, a farmer toasts to the sweetness of life and immediately drops his mug. No one reacts. He'll find it in the morning. The wine, when it appears, is less divine revelation and more academic tragedy. It's red, technically, though the colour suggests it's been through something. Imported from France, or possibly the neighbour's backyard, it arrives thin, tart and dusty, like it travelled second class on a cart full of onions. But it carries prestige. Wine meant culture, sophistication, and the vague aroma of social climbing. Only the rich drank it often, which is why everyone else drank it too, watered down, cut with honey, or stretched with whatever liquid was nearby. You could say the medieval world invented sangria by accident. The first sip surprises you. It's sharp, dry, and mildly offensive, but then slowly it improves, not because the wine changes, but because your standards collapse. That's the secret. Taste is temporary, but denial lasts forever. The tavern keeper doesn't bother hiding her disdain. She calls it noble vinegar. Still, she pours it with the precision of someone used to people making bad decisions on schedule. At the next table, two traders argue about whose wine is better. They both lose. The bard joins them, adds a verse about grapes, and forgets the ending halfway through. Someone claps anyway. In taverns, enthusiasm outranks talent. There's also cider, which claims to be fruit-based but rarely remembers which fruit. It smells pleasant enough, apples mostly, but tastes like regret that attended finishing school. In regions lucky enough to grow real apples, cider became the civilized cousin of ale, lighter, crisper, and slightly less fatal. In practice, it was fermented chaos served at room temperature. The best batches sparkled faintly. The worst batches hissed when you opened them. A traveller at the bar swears he once drank cider so sour it removed the enamel from his teeth and his memory of the previous week. The tavern keeper nods. That checks out. By now the room has softened. Not quieter, never quieter, but warmer, friendlier, fuzzed around the edges like a memory you haven't earned yet. The farmer's song drifts into nonsense. The monk's lecture melts into laughter. The air hums, thick with yeast, smoke, and premature confidence. The tavern itself seems to lean closer, like it's curious how this particular night will end. And you, still clutching your mug of mead, can't help noticing that the candlelight trembles slightly, either from the draught or from your depth perception taking a brief holiday. There's a moment in every medieval evening when reason quietly excuses itself. That's when the stories start. Tales of saints, spirits, and relatives who turned into saints or spirits, depending on the week. Someone swears they saw a ghost in the cellar. Someone else argues the ghost owes them money. The conversation escalates to philosophy, then collapses into snoring, all because of honey, grapes, and hubris. You glance toward the hearth. The tavern keeper is stirring a pot of stew, and you notice she's smiling faintly. The small, tired smile of someone who's seen centuries unfold through the same window. Every night, same ritual. People enter heavy, drink lighter, and leave carried by gravity and regret. She doesn't stop them. History needs its entertainment. You try one last sip. It's sweet and sharp all at once, a combination that feels honest somehow. Nothing here pretends to be perfect. The mugs are chipped, the ale's alive, the wine's confused, but it's all real. That's the charm. Civilization was born drunk and slightly sticky. You set the mug down carefully, hands warm, mind soft around the edges. The room sways a little, not dangerously, just enough to remind you that life itself is mildly fermented. Anyway, that's medieval variety for you. Honey for sweetness, grapes for ambition, and enough regret to flavour the whole evening. At some point, the human body decides it can't survive on liquid optimism alone. That's when someone says the bravest words in any tavern, "Is there food?" The tavern keeper doesn't answer right away. She just gestures toward a large pot simmering near the hearth, a cauldron the size of moral consequence. Its contents are technically dinner, though the word technically is doing most of the work. This is pottage, the eternal stew. The medieval slow cooker, the dish that has never truly been finished. It's made by adding things to the pot faster than they can be eaten. A perpetual broth that's been alive longer than some monarchs. Every day it's topped up with water, barley, a few vegetables, and whatever animal recently made poor life choices. No one remembers the original recipe, mostly because it's still in there somewhere, quietly haunting the flavour. You lift your spoon. It feels heavy with destiny and something fibrous. The first taste is not unpleasant, just complex. There's onion, turnip, maybe carrot, and something that used to be confidence. The broth is thick, dark, and older than you care to consider. It smells of smoke, herbs, and endurance. Everyone eats it. Rich or poor, sober or ruined, pottage does not discriminate. It's a democratic stew, equal parts charity and necessity, seasoned with salt if you're lucky, with resignation if you're not. The aroma fills the room, a blend of comfort and vague fear. Steam curls upward, carrying centuries of faintly suspicious nutrition. Some call it savoury, others call it inevitable. You call it edible, and that's victory enough. The tavern keeper ladles out bowls with the seriousness of a judge. No two portions are the same. Some get more broth, others more mystery. She knows exactly which customers can handle bones and which ones can't handle truth. When she passes you your bowl, she gives a small nod, the medieval equivalent of good luck. You blow on your spoon and hope it doesn't bite back. The texture is variable. One bite melts, the next crunches. That's part of the charm and adventure in every mouthful. You don't ask what's in it. No one does. In this room, curiosity is the one spice best avoided. Occasionally, a bone floats to the surface, like an artifact rising from a murky archaeological dig. Someone fishes it out, examines it, and quietly adds it back for the next generation. Waste not, want not, and don't anger the stew. Pottage was the backbone of medieval diet. Grains, beans, onions, leeks, cabbage, whatever, grew without dying first. Meat was rare, precious, and often theoretical. Most days, flavour came from herbs and hope. Some inns threw in fish, some added cheese, a few risked sausage if the moon was right. Everything went in, which is why historians have yet to find two identical recipes. The pot itself was never scrubbed clean. You didn't want to lose the seasoning, and you didn't want to face what lived at the bottom. Instead, it was boiled daily, allowing nature and temperature to sort things out. If something swam, it probably belonged there. If something hissed, it definitely didn't. The smell is oddly comforting. A thick blanket woven from root vegetables and quiet defiance. It seeps into your clothes, your hair, your future. Tomorrow people will smell you before they see you, and they'll know exactly where you've been. In this world, smell is social currency, the perfume of survival. Around you, the tavern eats. Wooden spoons clatter like applause. People lean over their bowls with the reverence of prayer. Conversation slows. Chewing becomes the only language anyone remembers. Even the dog gets a bowl, smaller, greasier, somehow happier. Every few minutes someone claims their bowl tastes different from yesterday. They're right, that's the magic. Pottage ages like fine wine left too close to a fire. Each day adds a new note, salt from sweat, ash from the hearth, and the faintest whisper of something once described as herb. It's history in liquid form. The tavern keeper tastes it occasionally, just to see if it's still behaving. If it's too thick, she adds water. If it's too thin, she adds bread. If it's too quiet, she adds salt. If it ever stops boiling, she adds panic. A monk near the fire raises his spoon to heaven and thanks the Lord for nourishment. The farmer next to him thanks the cook for the same. Both are correct. Miracles come in many viscosities. You chew slowly. The heat settles deep in your stomach, not gentle warmth, but industrial-grade endurance. It feels like you've swallowed the fireplace, smoky, heavy, and slightly moralizing. For a moment, you understand how people survived the Middle Ages, not through faith, but through boiling everything until faith tasted better. The bard, ever dramatic, declares that pottage is the song of the soil. No one argues, partly because he's right, and partly because no one wants to explain that his spoon is on fire. As the bowls empty, the noise of conversation returns. Belches become punctuation. Someone suggests another round of ale to rinse the soup. This is not a metaphor, it's procedure. You look into your bowl. The last inch of broth swirls like a small galaxy of crumbs and fat. You tip it back and drink it anyway. It's strangely satisfying, not because it tastes good, but because it tastes done. You survived another medieval meal, and statistically speaking, that's impressive. The tavern keeper collects the bowls, scrapes the remains back into the cauldron and stirs. The cycle continues. Tomorrow's stew has already begun. Anyway, that's dinner, a spoonful of history, a dash of hope, and a lingering aftertaste of survival. You don't eat alone in a medieval tavern. You couldn't even if you wanted to. Solitude isn't on the menu. The tables are long and unapologetically communal, each one a negotiation of elbows, appetites, and medieval definitions of personal space. When you sit down, you're instantly part of a conversation that started 3 centuries ago and never ended. Your neighbours arrive without introduction. A farmer, a soldier, a bard, and something that might be a local legend in human form. They nod once, the official medieval greeting that means, "I see you, and I trust you not to steal my spoon." You pull your bench close to the table. It creaks like it's reconsidering its life choices. Across from you, the farmer smiles through a beard containing more crumbs than hope. He gestures at your bowl and says something about good turnips this year. You nod. You don't know if that's true, but it feels socially appropriate. To your left, a soldier sits half in shadow, half in recovery. He eats like a man refueling a siege engine. One hand, one motion, no pauses. Each spoonful disappears with military precision. Between bites, he offers strategic advice about stew, mostly involving salt and divine intervention. Beside him, the bard is tuning a lute that lost the will to live several songs ago. He hums as he eats, not to entertain anyone in particular, but because rhythm makes the chewing feel less tragic. He occasionally rhymes words that have no business being together: ale and moral tale, pottage and cottage. No one stops him. In taverns, enthusiasm is the highest art form. At the end of the bench sits a hooded stranger, silent, still, perfectly comfortable with mystery. The firelight flickers across a face that refuses to explain itself. You can't tell if they're a pilgrim, a fugitive, or just shy. In medieval terms, all three are acceptable dinner guests. The air hums, not quiet, never quiet, but friendly. The clatter of wooden spoons, the crack of laughter, the occasional hiccup of a man losing an argument with physics. You can tell this isn't just a meal, it's an ecosystem. Taverns weren't restaurants, they were survival networks with seating. Merchants traded rumours as often as goods. Farmers swapped crop advice. Soldiers shared news from campaigns no one understood. And travellers exaggerated entire continents into existence. Information was currency, and here it flowed freer than the ale. The farmer tells you about a new law forbidding sinking after sunset. The bard immediately starts singing. The soldier nods solemnly and keeps chewing. The stranger doesn't move. The tavern keeper looks up from behind the bar and says, "Don't make me come over there." The song stops instantly. Authority achieved. You notice how people lean toward each other. Not affection, just survival. The room is warm, the bench is narrow, and there's safety in shared discomfort. Elbows touch. Mugs pass from hand to hand. Someone laughs too loud and spills. Someone else catches it with their sleeve and keeps talking. You realize humanity's first invention wasn't fire. It was conversation held over something flammable. A traveller across the table tells a story about a miracle cow that gives beer instead of milk. The crowd nods thoughtfully, not because they believe it, but because it's a beautiful idea. You learn that in medieval conversation, truth ranks somewhere below entertainment but above grammar. The smell of food still lingers, thick, meaty, and slightly apologetic. It mixes with smoke and the sweetness of cheap wine, creating a perfume that can only be described as tavern chic. Every breath feels shared, every sound repeats itself in the rafters until it becomes part of the architecture. Someone shouts to health, someone else shouts to survival. The monk at the next table shouts to moderation. No one drinks to that one. The bard finally strums his lute, and somehow the instrument holds together out of sympathy. The melody wobbles, but it works, part song, part accident. You find yourself tapping the table in time with the rhythm, half-hearted, half-hypnotised. Even the stranger's hood shifts slightly, like the idea of music offended them less than expected. A young boy runs between tables with a tray of mugs too large for his arms. He moves through the chaos like a professional hazard, dodging knees, feet, and theology. You watch him weave through history, carrying froth and hope. One day, he'll inherit this noise. He doesn't know it yet. You glance around and notice that everyone here fits together, not neatly, but completely. The farmer's laughter fills the space the soldier's silence leaves behind. The bard's nonsense drowns out the storm outside. The stranger's stillness holds it all steady. Even you, with your hesitant spoon and wide eyes, belong now. That's the secret of medieval taverns. They were temporary. Families held together by firelight, fatigue, and fermentation. No surnames required, no questions asked. If you could pay, you were welcome. If you couldn't, you washed dishes or told a good story. Both counted as currency. Someone passes you a mug without asking. You drink it without hesitation. It's warm, rough, possibly mead, possibly regret. No one explains. In this world, sharing is safer than wondering. Outside, the rain taps at the shutters. Inside, laughter answers. It's the sound of humanity insisting on being alive, even when the roof leaks and the soup tastes faintly of probability. The bard finishes his song. The crowd claps, not because it was good, but because it happened. That's the point of everything here. The doing, not the quality of the doing. Survival disguised as celebration. You lean back, the bench sighs under the weight of your new acquaintances. Your belly is full, your ears are buzzing, and for the first time you understand why this place matters. It's not just food or drink. It's permission to rest, to laugh, to exist loudly for a while before going back to a quieter kind of struggle. Anyway, you share a nod with the stranger. It's enough. No words needed, just the shared warmth of soup, ale, and brief humanity. Outside, the wind howls. Inside, the night hums. Every tavern has its moment. The instant the night tips from chatter into chorus, you hear it now. A low hum turns into melody, and the room, already too loud to think, decides to sing instead. The bard clears his throat like a man preparing for surgery. His lute is missing a string, his rhythm missing a plan, but confidence, as always, is louder than tuning. He strums once. It's not in key, but it's in spirit. The song begins as something about love, quickly becomes about war, and ends up somewhere between agriculture and divine punishment. No one minds. In a tavern, accuracy is optional, participation is mandatory. Each verse contradicts the last, and the chorus changes every drink. The crowd joins in enthusiastically, if not helpfully. Farmers roar from one side, soldiers from the other, creating the sound of a choir conducted by weather. Every offbeat clap lands exactly where it shouldn't, and somehow that makes it perfect. This is music as democracy. Everyone wrong in their own way, together. The bard grins, voice wobbling under the weight of his own invention. He improvises news into the lyrics. A rumour about taxes in the next village, a noble who fell off a horse, a new saint who may or may not exist. By the third verse, he's rewritten politics, and by the fourth, half the room believes him. That's how it worked. Taverns were Europe's first news network, ale-stained information exchanges where truth was filtered through melody and memory. Before printing presses or town criers, you learned about the world from someone slightly drunk with a string instrument. Reliability, questionable. Entertainment, guaranteed. You sip your ale and feel the vibration travel through the table. The bench beneath you becomes part of the instrument, a sounding board of elbows, mugs, and collective breath. The dog underfoot thumps its tail in perfect time, which officially makes it the best musician here. Between verses, deals happen quietly. A merchant leans toward a farmer, a promise of grain, a price whispered in the key of conspiracy. A soldier trades a knife for a pair of gloves. A thief sells information disguised as flattery. The bard doesn't notice, or maybe he does, and this song is just the camouflage everyone needs. The noise builds in layers: voice, laughter, the clang of mugs, a rhythmic cough from someone who's been inhaling the same smoke since the Crusades. It's chaos, but it has tempo. Even arguments fall into measure. A curse, a cheer, a hiccup, a cheer again. Somehow the room has turned itself into percussion. A man near the door bangs his mug for attention. He claims he knows a better song. He doesn't. His melody resembles an accident, his lyrics a threat. But everyone joins anyway, because silence would feel rude. The tavern keeper watches, arms folded, half proud, half prepared for fire. She knows how nights like this end, in laughter if fortune smiles, in splinters if it doesn't. Still, she lets the song play. Noise is good for business. It keeps the ghosts from eavesdropping. The bard switches to a ballad of negotiation, something about a widow, a miller, and a debt that may or may not involve pigs. Each verse adds another lie. Each lie earns another cheer. This is medieval diplomacy. Exaggerate until everyone's equally confused, then call it peace. You notice how the room leans with rhythm. Every sway toward the fire is trust. Every sway back toward the ale is survival. People move like tides in a wooden ocean, pulled by gravity and melody in equal measure. Someone shouts for quiet. No one listens. Instead, a second bard joins in, uninvited, tuneless, and immediately victorious. The first bard retaliates with volume. They duel in harmony's absence. It's the cultural version of jousting, minus horses, armour, and dignity. Half the tavern argues about which melody is correct. The other half argues about whether melody is real. The tavern keeper ends the debate by blowing out one candle, a symbolic gesture that somehow wins. Both bards bow. The crowd applauds. Peace treaty achieved. Between the fading laughter, you catch scraps of conversation. Rumours about kings, harvests, and taxes that might never arrive but already hurt. It's gossip, theology, and weather forecast all in one breath. Here, communication is both social duty and survival instinct. Miss a rumour, and you might miss a plague, a marriage, or a war. You tilt your mug, watch bubbles form and vanish, and realise that this is how history travels, not by scroll or decree, but by a song hummed by someone who remembers half the words and none of the meaning. The bard ends with a triumphant chord that sounds suspiciously like surrender. The room erupts in applause, whistles, and spilled beer. Coins clatter into a bowl, each one a thank you, a bribe, or an apology for the noise. He bows so low it could be repentance. Then he starts tuning again because art apparently is endless. The farmer wipes his mouth and declares that music brings luck. The soldier disagrees, says luck comes from dice. Someone produces a small leather pouch. The bard grins. He knows when an encore is about to get dangerous. The tavern's rhythm shifts. Laughter lowers. The sound changes key, from melody to the crisp, deliberate rattle of dice against wood. Every head turns. The song is over. The next act has begun. Anyway, the music fades, the crowd leans in, and you can feel the night change in tempo. Where words fail, luck takes over. The song dies down, and the room changes temperature. Not colder, just sharper. Like the air itself is waiting for something stupid to happen. The dice appear from a small leather pouch. They land on the table with that soft clack unique to trouble. Every tavern has its moment of truth, and tonight, it's carved from bone. Someone clears his throat, the universal sound of impending regret. The rules are simple. Roll high, win ale. Roll low, owe someone an apology, a coin, or occasionally a chicken. That last one depends on local law and the availability of chickens. The dice are small, square and uneven, made from sheep bone, polished by hands that didn't believe in fairness. Each face is a little off-centre, each edge carries the memory of someone else's bad night. They rattle with history, tiny cubes of mathematics and misplaced faith. The first roll hits the table, 4 and 2. The crowd exhales in sympathy, the medieval equivalent of saying, "Tough luck, but we saw that coming." Next to you, a soldier grips his mug and watches. He doesn't play. He's seen too many battles to trust anything shaped like a cube. He mutters, "Luck's just a coin that forgot which side it's on." The bard, predictably, turns that into a lyric before finishing his drink. The farmer rolls next. He shakes the dice between his hands as though praying would help, then blows on them, a superstition older than hygiene. It's said to chase away demons of bad fortune, though statistically demons seem to win most of the time. The dice tumble. Double 6. The room cheers like it just invented joy. He grins, triumphant. Someone mutters that he must have kissed a witch. Someone else mutters they'd like to meet that witch. You realise medieval gambling is equal parts mathematics and gossip. Coins slide across the table. Silver, copper, something that might once have been money. The tavern keeper doesn't stop it. Technically, gambling is banned. Practically, it's how the bills get paid. The church calls it sin. The tavern calls it rent. The candles flicker, shadows stretching long across the table like curious onlookers. Each face glows for a moment, then sinks back into the half-dark, where honesty can't quite find them. It's the perfect lighting for lies. A man with a hood steps forward, the silent stranger you noticed earlier. He sits down, calm as gravity. Someone offers him the dice. He shakes his head, then flips a coin that lands on its edge. The crowd murmurs. Someone crosses themselves. Superstition has officially arrived. He finally picks up the dice and rolls. They hit the wood, bounce once, and come to rest. 2 ones. Snake eyes. The table gasps. It's the kind of bad luck people remember years later when they need an example of divine comedy. He just smiles. Either he's enlightened, or the ale has removed his sense of consequence. The game continues. Laughter and curses trade places faster than the dice. You notice how the sound changes with every throw. The slap of palms, the rattle of bone, the hiss of breath between hope and disappointment. It's rhythm again, but darker now. Music replaced by math. Someone cheats. Of course they do. It's tradition. A quick palm, a swapped die, a smile that looks too proud of being symmetrical. The soldier notices but says nothing. Justice can wait until after the winnings are gone. The bard takes a turn. He insists his luck is poetic. He rolls a 3. The table agrees that poetry has been accurately represented. Then comes you. You didn't plan to play, but the mug in your hand and the warmth in your chest combine into courage disguised as curiosity. You shake the dice. They're heavier than expected, little weights of chance and human optimism. You blow on them, because at this point you'll try anything spiritual that doesn't require standing. They fall, tumble, stop. 5 and 1. A tie. The crowd groans in disappointment, which is strange since none of them are losing. The tavern keeper chuckles. "Beginner's mercy," she says, and pours you another drink that smells like foreshadowing. Dice games were the heartbeat of medieval leisure. They crossed class, gender and sanity lines. Peasants rolled for coins, nobles rolled for castles. Everyone lost eventually. That was the point. It reminded you that fortune didn't need reasons, and neither did the tax collector. The church tried to stop it, of course. Preachers warned that dice were instruments of the devil. Ironically, those sermons were so popular they became drinking games. Rules were simple. Sip every time the priest said temptation. Most parishioners reached enlightenment before the final blessing. In some towns, dice were seized and burned, which only increased demand, because nothing says holy relic like something you're not supposed to own. People carved new sets from bones, stones, even dried peas, anything small enough to hold in a hand and regret later. You glance around the room, the laughter's louder now but thinner, a sound stretched to its limit. Every smile carries a shadow of calculation. Luck feels alive, circling the table like a cat deciding who deserves the next lesson. The bard loses again and declares the dice cursed. The farmer wins again and declares the opposite. The stranger just watches, that faint, knowing grin making everyone a little nervous. The tavern keeper wipes the counter. She's not watching the game, but she's memorized every coin that changes hands. Another round begins, and for a moment everything holds still. The dice mid-air, the candlelight caught on their pale edges. Then they fall. The noise they make is small, but the room leans forward as if gravity suddenly got personal. The soldier mutters, "Luck's a woman," and she's laughing. You can't tell if he's right, but the sound that follows, the cheer, the groan, the laughter, definitely proves she has a sense of humour. Anyway, that's gambling. Hope dressed as entertainment, mathematics pretending to be destiny, and everyone convinced they're smarter than probability. For now, the crowd's still friendly, but the night isn't over, and luck, like ale, always runs out eventually. Every good evening eventually decides it's had enough of good behaviour. You can feel it happen now. The laughter still sounds like laughter, but there's a new rhythm underneath, sharper, faster, just slightly out of tune. Someone loses a bet. Someone else insists the dice are cursed. A third person insists he's just unlucky, which is medieval for I'm about to make this everyone's problem. It starts with a tone, not shouting, not yet. Just that subtle pitch of voice that says someone's ego is warming up. A mug lands harder than intended. Liquid leaps free. A few drops hit your sleeve, the first rain of a very small, very local storm. The soldier at your table sighs, sets down his drink and mutters, "Ah, the evening weather has arrived." He's seen this before. They all have. The argument grows like thunder, distant, inevitable, and oddly musical. Voices rise in overlapping scales. Disbelief, insult, theory, and volume. The farmer, still basking in his earlier luck, swears he played fair. The bard claims poetic justice demands a rematch. The stranger stays silent, which somehow makes it worse. Someone points, someone stands, and the entire room tilts toward tension. The sound changes again. Laughter faltering. A chair scraping like a violin tuning for violence. You can almost hear the next few seconds assembling themselves. The first shove lands softly, like punctuation added by a hesitant editor. The second one arrives with commitment. A mug tips, a chair topples, and now the tavern has officially transitioned into its next form, unpaid entertainment. People shout names no one has, throw phrases that were never compliments. It's not chaos yet, more like a dance choreographed by confusion. Everyone moves without thinking, the firelight flickering across faces that can't decide between anger and excitement. The bard, ever loyal to drama, begins narrating what's happening, which helps no one. He rhymes "fight with a knight" at least 4 times before a spoon sails past his head. He ducks, still singing. Art, as always, refuses to learn. The noise swells, a percussion of mugs, boots, and questionable decisions. Tables thump like drums, benches squeal in protest. Even the fire joins in. popping sparks in enthusiastic agreement. The dog barks once, purely for rhythm. Someone shouts, "Thief!" Someone else shouts, "Liar!" And someone in the corner yells, "Encore!" which technically keeps morale up. You stay where you are. There's no point joining. These aren't fights so much as rituals. Medieval taverns handled anger the way the modern world handles rain. You just waited for it to pass and tried not to get too wet. The tavern keeper doesn't panic. She wipes her hands on her apron, takes one slow look around and sighs. That same weary sound used by people who know exactly how many chairs they'll need to replace tomorrow. She doesn't shout. She doesn't rush. She simply steps forward, ladle in hand, the way a queen might approach a rebellion she fully intends to win. The noise falters, then stumbles, then apologizes. Even the dice stop moving, rolling themselves to a cautious halt. A few men are still breathing heavily, looking for dignity among the splinters. They don't find any. The smell of spilled ale joins the air, warm, yeasty, sticky. It mixes with smoke, sweat, and embarrassment. The perfect perfume of aftermath. The soldier shakes his head. Every night ends the same, he says, with someone fighting over luck, and luck always winning. He's right. No one ever really remembers what started these quarrels. They just remember the bruises and the fact that they got to feel alive for a few noisy minutes. Across the room, the bard is still writing lyrics about it. You hear him mumble, even the furniture joined in, and you can't decide if that's an exaggeration or an eyewitness account. A stool limps by on one leg, so possibly both. The tavern keeper surveys the damage. One broken mug, one overturned chair, and one man now insisting he was only stretching. She taps the ladle against the table. "Enough," she says, and it is. Her voice doesn't rise, it simply ends things. The room exhales. People start picking up what isn't broken. Someone offers to buy another round, a peace treaty written in foam and fatigue. Slowly, conversation resumes. Quieter now, the laughter tempered, the lesson already half forgotten. In medieval life, fights were almost comforting. They broke the monotony, proved you were still strong enough to argue, and gave everyone something to talk about tomorrow. Nobody wanted blood, just noise, and maybe a bruise shaped like attention. You glance toward the hearth. The fire burns steady again, as if proud to have witnessed such dedication to drama. The dog curls back up, the stranger finishes his drink, untouched by anything but patience. The tavern smells of adrenaline and apology. The bard strums one soft note, testing if music is safe again. It is. He starts a slow, half tune about forgiveness and spilled ale. No one listens, but everyone hears it anyway. The tavern keeper leans on her counter, ladle still in hand. Her eyes say she's seen this scene 1,000 times, and that she'll see it 1,000 more. People come here to escape the world and end up reenacting it in miniature. At least here, the damage can be cleaned up with a rag and a glare. You lift your mug, what's left of it, and take another sip. It tastes faintly of dust and moral victory. Anyway, that's how medieval diplomacy worked. One accusation, one apology, and enough noise to drown out the point entirely. The noise fades, leaving only the sound of breathing and mild regret. Every medieval night ends this way, half the room victorious, the other half pretending to be. You can feel the tension deflate like a tired wineskin. The fight is over, but the paperwork has just begun. The tavern keeper stands behind her counter again, ladle in hand, the unofficial symbol of local government. When the church wasn't watching and the sheriff was asleep, justice fell to whoever owned the broom, and tonight, that's her. No one calls it court, but that's what it is. A bench for the guilty, a table for the evidence, and the faint smell of stew serving as moral authority. The tavern itself seems to straighten its beams, ready for due process. She starts with a glare. It works faster than any sermon. The farmer coughs into his sleeve. The soldier looks interested in the floor. The bard pretends to tune his lute, as if music could erase liability. The stranger, as always, remains an unsolved riddle. The tavern keeper taps the ladle against a mug. First question, she says, who started it? 3 hands rise, then 4, then all go down again. Apparently memory has decided to protect the innocent by erasing everyone. She nods. Typical. The next question. Who's paying for the mug? This one gets faster answers, mostly pointing at one another in cascading accusation. It's less a trial and more a performance art piece called collective denial. She sighs, the kind of sigh that could extinguish candles. All right, she says. New rule. Everyone buys a round. That'll cover it. The crowd murmurs in admiration. Justice, swift and refreshingly practical. Coins appear, some real, some wishful. A few customers barter with promises which she accepts, because she remembers every debt anyway. Her ledger isn't on paper, it's carved into her patience. The smell of ale dominates now, yeasty, sour, oddly soothing. It mixes with the faint char of something overcooked. The stew has boiled too long during the excitement. Smoke curls upward. Culinary witness statement. She lifts the lid and grimaces. Burnt again, she mutters, which in tavern language means dinner is served. A new pot is already simmering beside it. Order restored. The kitchen never stops. It just adjusts its expectations. Meanwhile, the bard begins to rewrite the story because that's his job. In his version, the fight becomes a tale of courage. The broken mug becomes a symbol of loyalty, and the tavern keeper is upgraded to Lady of the Ladle, Defender of the Realm. He sings 2 lines before she interrupts. If I'm the lady, you're the jester. The audience applauds, case closed. The farmer, now nursing a bruise shaped like humility, offers to patch the bench he broke. She waves him off. That bench has more history than you, she says. Leave it crooked, it matches the rest of us. The soldier takes it upon himself to restack chairs, part apology, part strategy to look busy until guilt expires. He hums a hymn under his breath, something about honour, possibly about soup, hard to tell. The stranger slips a silver coin onto the bar. The tavern keeper glances at it. Too shiny to be local. Foreign, she says. He nods once, then leaves it behind. No one asks questions. Every tavern keeps a few secrets for flavour. Outside, the wind sighs through the shutters, the night air cool and damp with old rain. Inside, warmth returns slowly, the comfortable kind born from shared exhaustion. You realise this place doesn't need rules written down, it only needs memory, and she remembers everything. She ladles fresh stew into new bowls, distributes them without ceremony. Steam fills the air again, blending with the faint sweetness of ale spilled hours ago. It's the scent of peace, slightly overcooked but satisfying. You eat quietly. Around you, conversation resumes, soft and careful, like people testing whether the world has forgiven them yet. Someone laughs, tentatively at first, then louder, until laughter fills the cracks the fight left behind. The bard starts another song, slower this time, gentle, tired, more lullaby than legend. His voice trembles a little. It's not performance now, it's apology. The tavern keeper listens, polishing a mug that was probably clean already. She doesn't smile exactly, but her eyes soften. She's seen it all. Anger, joy, chaos, stillness. Every night a different story told by the same kind of fool. Every morning she resets the stage. You notice how calm it feels now. The earlier tension has evaporated into steam and forgiveness. Even the floor seems less sticky. The dog snores under the table, the final sign that civilization has returned. In the corner, the soldier and the farmer shake hands. Not out of friendship, but because it's easier than explaining they don't remember what started it. The bard strums his last chord, the stranger raises his mug, and for a moment the entire tavern breathes in time. Outside, rain begins again, soft, rhythmic, unbothered. Inside, the tavern keeper hums quietly. A tune only she knows. something between a prayer and inventory. Anyway, that's medieval justice for you. No courts, no scrolls, just a steady hand, a memory like iron, and a ladle that settles every dispute in one motion. After the fight, after the court, after the stew, the tavern finds its quiet again. It's not silence exactly. Silence doesn't survive here, but a softer kind of noise. A lull. The sound of people remembering they're human. The bard sits near the hearth, his lute now mostly in tune or at least too tired to argue. The strings hum softly, the kind of sound that forgives the night before it forgets it. He looks around, measures the crowd, and begins. It starts as a story, not a song, just words shaped like rhythm. He speaks of kings who ruled badly, of knights who fought bravely, and of geese who apparently did both. The crowd listens the way the poor always listen to hope, suspiciously, but hungry for it anyway. The tale grows. A hero rises, a dragon complains, a princess sighs audibly. None of it's true, and no one cares. Accuracy is optional. Volume, mandatory. He gestures broadly, his hands painting pictures no one can see but everyone understands. Every tavern had one of these men, part historian, part liar, part therapist with a rhythm problem. Their stories carried gossip, wisdom, and leftovers of last week's headlines. They were the libraries of the illiterate, the news before news, the entertainment before boredom had better options. The fire crackles. The sound blends with his words, each spark landing like punctuation. Someone near the wall closes their eyes, half listening, half drifting. The bard's voice drops lower, sliding into that late-night tone, the kind that feels secret even when it isn't. His hero reaches a forest, finds a monster, and immediately makes poor choices. It's the kind of plot you can drink along to. The crowd murmurs in approval. Every tale needs a fool, and every listener loves the assurance that at least tonight, it isn't them. The farmer interrupts with a correction. In my version, he says, the monster was married. The bard pauses, weighs this new information, and nods gravely. Ah, yes, he says, to the tax collector. The crowd roars. Revision accepted. That's how storytelling works here. Collective authorship powered by alcohol and democracy. Every listener owns the plot. Every voice edits the truth. It's messy, contradictory, and entirely human. The tale continues. A sword appears. It's described as shining brighter than the sun, which given medieval metallurgy means polished recently. The hero swings it once, misses gloriously, and redeems himself by delivering a moral no one asked for. The bard leans into the glow of the fire. The light flickers on his face, casting shadows that look like wisdom. He pauses mid-sentence, just long enough to let the room breathe with him. That's the secret of the good storytelling. The space between words, where the imagination fills in the budget cuts. Outside, the wind sighs around the shutters. The tavern creaks like an old man agreeing with a story he's heard before. Inside, mugs rest quietly, forgotten for the first time all night. People are still. Even the dog is listening. The bard lowers his voice further. He speaks of a ghost now, a tavern spirit that drifts through alehouses looking for warmth, stories, or possibly its bar tab. He says if you drink too fast, the spirit hides in your cup and follows you home. If you drink too slow, it grows bored and spills your drink out of spite. The crowd nods. This seems plausible. Someone crosses themselves. Someone else orders another round just in case. Superstition and thirst, the oldest duet in Europe. The monk, who has returned to observe the situation, snorts at the mention of spirits. The only spirit in this room, he says, is barley. The crowd laughs. Not because it's funny, but because arguing with monks after midnight is bad luck. The bard smiles politely and continues. The story moves toward its end, a moral about courage, patience, and the importance of paying your debts. You can tell he's improvising. The details wobble, the logic leaks slightly, but the rhythm holds. It's not truth he's chasing, it's closure. He finishes with a flourish, the hero victorious, the dragon repentant, the tax collector still married somehow. Then he bows, half from pride, half from balance issues. Applause ripples through the room, soft, genuine and sticky from ale. Coins clink on the table, a few, not many. He gathers them slowly like a man picking up the pieces of his dignity one by one. The tavern keeper nods once. It's not payment, it's permission. He may stay, sing again, and eat tomorrow. That's the unspoken contract between performer and public. Keep us distracted, and we'll keep you alive. You lean back. The heat from the hearth presses gently against your knees. The air smells of ash, ale, and words. You realise the story wasn't just about dragons or heroes, it was about survival through storytelling. The need to turn ordinary suffering into something worth repeating. That's what people have always done. Invent meaning, pour it into rhyme, and pretend the world makes sense for a few minutes before last call. Anyway. The bard's finished, the room exhales, and somewhere in the rafters the old ghost of the tavern probably claps once politely. Not long after the bard finishes, the tavern door opens again. It doesn't slam, it sighs, like a confession. A hooded figure steps inside, his robe heavy with travel, his eyes heavy with judgment he swears isn't judgment. You recognise him immediately, the monk, that familiar shape of piety wandering the landscape, collecting sins the way others collect stories. He carries a satchel that probably holds scripture, and a face that probably doesn't like what it sees. He surveys the room, the spilled ale, the slumped heads, the smell of humanity at half power. Then, very quietly, he mutters something that sounds like, research. He approaches the bar with the caution of a man hoping to be disappointed and succeeding. The tavern keeper nods at him without ceremony. She's seen 1,000 versions of this man, each certain he's here on business, each leaving with forgiveness that tastes suspiciously of barley. "What'll it be?" she asks. He hesitates, torn between moral duty and curiosity. Finally, "Small beer, for health." She pours without comment. He sips, he coughs, he looks heavenward. "Fermented," he says, as if discovering gravity. She nods. That's the idea. The monk sits near the fire, clutching his mug like it's a relic that might bite. He tries to look neutral, but neutrality doesn't survive in a tavern. Someone nearby toasts to the saints. He half smiles, which is already half a sin. The bard, sensing fresh material, sidles closer. "Brother," he says, "is it true that monks make beer holier by brewing it slowly?" The monk answers carefully, "We brew to sustain our order and our prayers." "So, yes," says the bard. The crowd laughs. The monk does not, though his eyes flicker with something suspiciously like amusement. Medieval monks had a complicated relationship with alcohol. Officially, moderation was divine. Unofficially, moderation was whatever the abbot could still spell. Monasteries brewed some of the best beer in Europe. Clean, balanced, spiritual. Proof that even holiness needs a hobby. They claimed it was for nourishment during fasting. Liquid bread, they called it. Technically true, spiritually questionable, but it's hard to argue with theology that tastes this good. The monk sips again. You watch his expression soften. It's not pleasure exactly, more recognition, like seeing a sin and deciding to forgive it preemptively. Around him, conversation resumes. The farmer explains crop rotations to anyone listening. The soldier tells a story that grows braver with every retelling. The bard hums a tune that accidentally matches the sound of snoring. It's humanity at its most comfortable, messy, loud, and alive. The monk listens, his eyes tracing the smoke curling toward the rafters. Perhaps he's thinking about souls. Perhaps he's calculating how long before someone asks him for confession. He finishes his beer before anyone can. Another mug appears, the tavern keeper's doing. She says nothing, just sets it down with the quiet efficiency of divine intervention. He looks at her. "You're very generous," he says. "I'm very observant," she replies. The crowd chuckles. It's unclear which of them is winning, but both seem content with the draw. After a while, the monk begins to talk, not preaching, just remembering out loud. He tells a story about a pilgrimage gone wrong, a storm that turned a relic cart into a raft, and a goat that somehow achieved sainthood by accident. The audience loves it. His voice is calm, deliberate, soothing, a sermon disguised as bedtime. By the third anecdote, he's laughing at his own jokes. By the fourth, he's gesturing with his mug. At the fifth, the bard harmonises with him on a verse of St. Dunstan's Ale. It's chaos, but theological. He doesn't resist. He's still a monk, just one currently conducting field research. The tavern keeper shakes her head, smiling faintly. It's not mockery, it's memory. She's seen piety bend before, never break. Even faith, she knows, needs to exhale sometimes. You notice how the monk's tone changes with the room. The more the crowd relaxes, the gentler his words become. He quotes scripture between jokes, each line landing like a candle being lit in the dark. No one minds. No one even notices when they start nodding along. It's the closest thing to prayer this room ever manages. For a brief moment, the tavern feels holy, not because anyone is sober, but because everyone is equal. Sins, stories, and stew all taste the same under this light. It's the kind of grace no doctrine ever wrote down, but everyone somehow remembers. Eventually the monk stands. He thanks the tavern keeper for her patience, the bard for his noise, and the rest of the room for their humanity. "God," he says, "must love you all very much to keep giving you mornings." Someone toasts to that. He drinks to it too. He leaves quietly, his robe trailing a faint scent of smoke and humility. Outside, the rain has stopped. Inside, the crowd exhales as though blessed. The bard mutters, "Research purposes, allegedly," and everyone laughs. The tavern keeper shakes her head, fills another round, and the fire settles into a steady glow again. Anyway, that's the thing about faith. Sometimes it comes from a pulpit, sometimes from a mug, and sometimes, if you're lucky, from both at once. Morning always brings clarity, or at least regret in better lighting. By the time the sun pushes its way through the shutters, the tavern is quieter, its floor a battlefield of mugs, crumbs, and dignity in recovery. The monk is back. Not the same one, perhaps, but identical in spirit. Robe scrolls, the faint aura of sanctified exhaustion. He stands by the door like a weather event that smells faintly of incense. Outside, a small crowd has gathered. Farmers, traders, and the occasional hangover seeking forgiveness. He raises his hands. "Brothers and sisters," he begins, which, in tavern language, means brace yourselves. "Last night I heard laughter. Too much laughter. I heard songs too joyful. I smelled ale too." "Ale?" He pauses for effect. The crowd nods politely, which is medieval, for please get to the part about salvation. He continues, "Sin thrives in cheerfulness. When man laughs too loud, the devil takes notes. A chicken clucks loudly nearby, proving his point unintentionally. He looks toward the tavern window as if addressing the building itself. Inside these walls, virtue sleeps while vice sings. From inside, someone sneezes. Someone else claps. The tavern, it seems, remains neutral. Public sermons were common in these times. Taverns were both temptation and target, the physical embodiment of everything the clergy feared. Noise, indulgence, democracy, and people who didn't take orders sober. Every few weeks, a priest or monk would arrive to remind everyone that joy should be rationed carefully, like salt or faith. The monk continues his speech, his voice rising above the wind and the sound of livestock negotiating theology. He warns of drunkenness, gambling, dancing, and the particularly heinous sin of singing after dark. At this, the bard, half awake on a bench, mutters, "Good thing I only sing in bad taste." The crowd snickers. The monk presses on, pretending not to hear. He waves a parchment, some decree about closing hours, approved by men who never visited Tavern past sunset. By the order of his grace, he declares, all alehouses must cease serving at the toll of 9. Someone asks, morning or night? He ignores the question, which is wise because no one intends to follow the answer. The tavern keeper, standing in the doorway, listens with arms folded. She's heard every sermon in every decade. When he warns that the wages of sin is death, she nods and mutters, so's not eating. The monk hears her and hesitates. For a moment, theology meets economics. Neither wins. He switches tone, softer now, pleading rather than threatening. God gave you hands to work, not to gamble, voices to pray, not to sing bawdy songs. The bard from inside immediately strums 2 inappropriate chords. Divine timing. The monk sighs. See? Temptation mocks me even now. Despite the warnings, no one seems particularly alarmed. They know the rhythm of this dance. Condemnation at dawn, celebration by dusk. It's the medieval equivalent of recycling. The system works. You watch the faces around you. The farmers listen out of respect, the traders out of curiosity, and the tavern keeper because she's legally required to. But none of them look guilty. They've survived plagues, taxes, and winter. A sermon is just weather in a different tone. The monk concludes dramatically. He holds up a wooden cross, gestures at the tavern like it's plotting something, and declares, "Joy is a dangerous fire, handle it with fear." At which point the tavern door opens and actual smoke rolls out from the kitchen. Someone burned the stew again. The timing is, admittedly, divine. He coughs, waves away the smoke and decides to interpret it as symbolism. See, the Lord sends a sign. The tavern keeper steps forward, ladle in hand. Actually, she says, that's just Tuesday. The crowd laughs. The monk exhales, defeated but not destroyed. Faith is eternal. Patience is renewable. He lowers his voice, half sermon, half confetti. You must understand, he says, we preach because we care. The tavern keeper nods. And we drink because we listen. Mutual understanding achieved. He collects a few coins from the more polite listeners, enough to buy bread, and perhaps ironically a pint. The bard calls after him, "Come back tonight, we'll sing something holier." He almost smiles. Almost. Then he leaves, robes fluttering like forgiveness that didn't quite stick. As the crowd disperses, the tavern breathes again. Inside, the chairs are upright, the fire steady, and laughter returns quietly, not defiant, just necessary. Medieval life depended on this balance. Guilt in daylight, joy at night. It wasn't rebellion, it was maintenance. Even sinners need structure. You sip what's left in your mug, lukewarm, honest, forgiving. The monk's words echo faintly in your head, but they fade beneath the sound of spoons, laughter, and the crackling fire. Religion may govern the soul, but taverns govern morale. Anyway. They banned joy again, and joy laughed, poured itself another drink and carried on exactly as before. There comes a point in every night when the laughter thins. It doesn't stop, it just gets tired. The jokes are slower now, the smiles longer, the words stretched like melted wax. The candles are dying. They don't go out all at once. They surrender politely, one wick at a time. Each flame flickers, bows, and joins the smoke it's been making all evening. The room glows dimly, not darkness yet, just hesitation. The tavern keeper moves between tables, pinching wicks, adjusting mugs, rearranging exhaustion. She hums to herself, a tune made of arithmetic and endurance. Every night she measures time not by hours, but by candles. 5 for supper, 3 for laughter, 1 for forgiveness. The air feels thick enough to touch. It smells of everything that has happened. Ale, soot, onions, and compromise. Even the smoke seems to know it's time to rest. Outside, the town has gone quiet. The curfew bell has already rung somewhere in the distance. a hollow sound that tells you the sheriff finally remembered his job. If you're still out past that bell, you're either lost, late, or lucky enough to have a place like this. Inside, a few regulars linger. The bard sits by the hearth, eyes half closed, plucking at invisible strings. The farmer snores softly into his sleeve, dreaming, no doubt, of fields that don't answer back. The soldier polishes his dagger with the concentration of a man trying not to remember why he owns it. And the stranger, still hooded, still silent, watches the fire as though it owes him a confession. The monk has long since gone, but his words hang in the rafters like the smell of incense, faint, harmless, occasionally useful. Someone murmurs a blessing before finishing their drink, hedging spiritual bets. The fire gives a last defiant crack, sending up a small storm of sparks that drift and vanish. It's beautiful but fragile, the kind of beauty that only exists because it's almost gone. The tavern keeper ladles out what remains of the stew. It's more history than food by now, a warm brown whisper of everything that survived the evening. She hands you a bowl without asking. It tastes like ashes, salt, and something kind. Comfort, repackaged as fatigue. She sits for the first time tonight, wiping her hands on her apron, studying the quiet like it's a puzzle she's solved 100 times. I always think the silence will sound different, she says softly. It never does. You nod because silence never needs witnesses, just agreement. The candles sink lower. The walls take back their shadows. Someone hums the end of a tune that never had a beginning. For a moment, it feels like the whole building is breathing, in through the cracks, out through the chimney. Curfew laws existed to keep order, but mostly they reminded people that chaos preferred candlelight. Fires had to be banked, doors barred, voices lowered, not because the night was dangerous, it always was, but because pretending to control it helped everyone sleep. You lean back, your chair groaning in sympathy. The wood under you is warm from 100 previous occupants. It remembers every story, every argument, every apology. The tavern itself feels alive, a creature stitched together from laughter and splinters. The smell of burning tallow thickens. It clings to your clothes, your hair, your memory. Tomorrow, when the sun finds you, you'll still carry it, proof you belong to this hour. The tavern keeper rises, stirs the fire one last time, and says quietly, "That's enough light for tonight." It's not an order, just a statement of physics. The remaining candles agree and gutter out obediently. Darkness doesn't fall, it seeps. The world reduces itself to glow, embers, breath, the faint shine of ale in half-empty mugs. You can still hear the dog snoring under the table, a steady, earthy rhythm, the heartbeat of comfort. Outside, the wind changes direction. You can tell by the way the shutters whisper. Rain, maybe. Or just the night deciding to start over somewhere else. Someone asks the hour. No one knows. Time stopped keeping score an ale ago. Here there's only before sleep and after. You feel the weight of the day settle into your shoulders. Not sadness, not even fatigue, just gravity doing its gentle work. The tavern keeper douses the last flame. For a moment there's nothing. Then the embers glow again, tiny suns refusing extinction. That's the tavern's secret. It never fully sleeps. Even in darkness, it remembers how to shine. Anyway, the candles have burned low, the night has agreed to pause, and you, warm, fed, faintly smoky, are exactly where every weary traveller in history has wanted to be. Half awake, half dreaming, and safe enough to stop listening for danger. Eventually, even chaos needs a bedtime. The tavern has emptied to a few stubborn souls and the dog, who's clearly claiming squatters' rights by the hearth. The fire sighs more than burns now, each log collapsing like a tired thought. You feel the warmth fading from your bones. The tavern keeper catches your eye and gestures upward. "Beds are upstairs," she says, though beds is a generous word for what awaits. The stairs creak under your weight, each step voicing an opinion about your life choices. They twist toward darkness, lit only by a candle stub that's losing hope. You grip the rail, rough wood, sticky with centuries of hands, and climb slowly, the sound of your boots swallowed by age. At the top, the air changes. It's cooler, quieter, and carries the faint perfume of straw, damp wool, and shared humanity. A small corridor stretches ahead, lined with doors that don't believe in hinges. Someone snores behind one of them, a deep rhythmic sound like furniture meditating. The room you're shown is small enough to make the concept of privacy theoretical. A low ceiling presses the air close. The window is more symbolic than functional. A square of moonlight smeared across the wall. Your bed is a wooden frame stuffed with straw, covered by a rough wool blanket that could exfoliate a conscience. You sit down carefully. The mattress crunches like autumn leaves. Every movement releases a faint earthy scent, a mix of hay, sweat, and ambition. You shift once, twice, then accept your fate. Comfort, in medieval terms, is any surface not actively attacking you. The tavern keeper sets a candle on the sill and points toward the far corner. If anything moves that shouldn't, it's probably a mouse, she says. If it talks, it's probably a ghost. Either way, don't scream. The walls are thin. You nod. It's unclear whether she's joking. She leaves, and you're alone. Alone in the sense that at least 6 people are snoring within earshot. The walls don't separate guests so much as politely imply boundaries. From the next room, you hear a farmer mumbling in his sleep about turnips. From below, the faint clatter of mugs being stacked, the night's final punctuation marks. You lie back, the straw shifting under you like restless thoughts. The blanket is rough but warm. You can feel every fibre, every knot, every small betrayal of comfort. You close your eyes, but your body refuses to believe it's safe yet. There's something deeply human about sleeping above a tavern, a kind of suspended trust. Below, the world still hums faintly. The dying fire, the steady breath of walls that have seen too much. It feels almost sacred, like lying inside history's chest, listening to its heartbeat through layers of dust and ale. Inns and taverns weren't quite the same. Inns served travellers with money, rooms with locks, and occasionally, food that didn't hiss. Taverns were for everyone else, a patchwork of strangers united by exhaustion. For a few coins, you got a bed, a meal, and an equal chance at catching someone else's cough. Luxury, really. You think about the countless travellers who've slept here before you. Pilgrims, merchants, fugitives, lovers, soldiers. All of them laying down their burdens on this same untrustworthy straw. You can almost hear them. The ghosts of footsteps, sighs, unfinished stories. Some medieval people believed that spirits wandered through taverns at night, drawn by warmth and noise, hoping to borrow someone's dream. Drink too much, they said, and you might wake to find a ghost sleeping beside you. A quiet reminder that mortality enjoys good company. You try not to think about it. The candle flickers. The flame dances lazily, throwing moving shadows across the walls. One of them looks vaguely humanoid. You blink, and it looks vaguely like you. You decide that's either profound or terrifying, possibly both. The floorboards creak somewhere beyond the door. Footsteps, slow, uncertain. You hold your breath. Then you hear the dog's claws clicking on the stairs. Relief, followed by gratitude for dogs and skepticism of floors. You turn on your side. The blanket scratches your chin affectionately. The straw beneath you shifts again, a rustle that sounds almost like whispering. You tell yourself it's nothing, but the part of your mind still awake disagrees. Welcome to the intersection of fatigue and imagination. You reach for the mug of water beside your bed. It tastes faintly of smoke and victory. Somewhere in the dark, a distant bell marks the hour, though no one knows which one. Time up here is measured by candle and courage. You think of the tavern below, its laughter finally dimmed to a hum. Even in sleep, it holds its guests like a cradle that leaks slightly. For all its noise and imperfections, it's a kind of home. Temporary, smoky, real. You close your eyes again. This time the straw feels softer, the air warmer, the darkness less opinionated. You drift towards sleep, past the line where history turns into dreams. Outside, the wind shifts. The shutters tap once, a good night from the world. The last candle gutters out, and the room sighs into darkness. Anyway, privacy was a luxury item, but comfort, this strange, communal, imperfect comfort, was included in the price. Morning arrives the way truth always does, uninvited, unavoidable, and slightly too bright. You wake to the sound of someone else regretting everything. It's a deep, wordless groan, the universal hymn of hangovers. Your eyes open reluctantly. Grey light presses through the tiny window, turning dust into art and regret into visibility. The room looks different now, less charming, more forensic. The straw mattress has collapsed in several places. The blanket smells like ambition gone stale, and your head hums faintly, like a church bell, dedicated to poor decision-making. You sit up slowly, the motion causing your skull to protest in several languages. There's a half-finished mug of something on the table. You sniff it. Ale. You consider your options, then make the brave choice. You drink it anyway. It's warm, flat, and surprisingly medicinal. Not because it heals you, but because it convinces you you've suffered enough to deserve recovery. Downstairs, you hear movement. The tavern is alive again, chairs scraping, water sloshing, and someone sweeping in a rhythm that sounds like revenge. The smell of the previous night still hangs in the air, ale, smoke, and human optimism turned liquid. You pull on your shoes, which seem heavier than usual, and make your way down the stairs, each step complaining louder than the last. Sunlight leaks through cracks in the shutters, painting thin gold lines across the dusty floor. It's beautiful in the same way old parchment is beautiful, fragile, unintentionally honest. The tavern looks smaller in daylight. The magic of firelight has burned away, leaving behind truth in wooden form. You can see every stain, every nick, every unsupervised sentry. It's still home, just more realistic about it. The tavern keeper is already at work, a wooden bucket at her feet. A look of mild disappointment aimed at the entire human race. She glances up when she sees you. "You're alive," she says, not as a compliment. "Barely," you answer. "Good," she says. "You'll fit in." She hands you a mug. Not ale this time, but something lighter, duller, and somehow more suspicious. "Small beer," she explains. "Breakfast for those who've survived the night." You take a cautious sip. It tastes like water with a resume. Small beer was the morning drink of Europe. Mildly fermented, low in alcohol, safe enough for children and the spiritually compromised. It kept the waterborne plagues at bay and the population slightly tipsy, which probably helped everyone tolerate each other's company. The bard stumbles out from a corner, hair like hay in denial, clutching his lute like a guilty conscience. He blinks at the sunlight. "Is it always this bright?" he asks. "No," says the tavern keeper, "just today." He nods, satisfied, and collapses onto a bench to tune the wrong string for 20 minutes. The soldier appears next, already dressed, his posture suggesting both discipline and deep regret. He orders the same small beer, calls it liquid courage for the second day. The farmer joins him, still half asleep, still proudly claiming victory from a game no one remembers. The smell of stew drifts in again, but in daylight it's less inviting, more archaeological. Breakfast apparently is whatever survived the night. You eat slowly, the texture somewhere between porridge and punishment. Still, it's warm, and warmth at this hour is victory. Outside, the town is waking too. You hear the clatter of carts, the cry of vendors who sound personally offended by commerce, and a rooster who clearly enjoys his work too much. Medieval mornings were practical affairs. No coffee, no silence, just survival reactivating. Inside, the tavern keeper hums softly as she works, the same rhythm as last night, only quieter now, a hymn to continuity. You watch her move, the same efficiency, the same calm authority. She's seen 1,000 mornings like this. Each one begins with mess and ends with memory. You glance toward the window. Outside, the sky is pale grey, a colour somewhere between pewter and hangover. Sunlight tries its best but achieves only politeness. A few flies dance near the sill, optimists looking for purpose. You envy them their energy. The smell of clean water mingles with the old ale. She's scrubbing the tables, each stroke erasing a little bit of last night's foolishness. You realise that tavern mornings are exercises in forgiveness. Everything gets a second chance, the mugs, the floor, even you. The bard starts a new song, soft, uncertain, about the morning after the glory of man. No one listens, but everyone hears him anyway. It's good background music for survival. The tavern keeper brings over a ledger, its cover stained, its edges curled. She flips through the pages, pausing occasionally to frown. You can tell the book has opinions. "We'll settle your tab after breakfast," she says. Her tone implies this will be more spiritual than financial. You nod. You're not sure what you owe. Money, dignity, possibly furniture. You take another sip of the small beer. It tastes slightly better now, or you've just surrendered. The world feels steadier. The headache has downgraded from divine punishment to moral suggestion. Congratulations. You survived. Barely. And in this time, that already makes you a success story. Anyway, the morning has forgiven you. The sunlight doesn't judge. It's too tired. And somewhere, a ledger waits, ready to turn last night's chaos into arithmetic. Every story ends with a bill. That's the rule. Even history runs on credit. The tavern keeper sits at the counter, the morning light catching the fine dust on her ledger. It's not a book in the modern sense, more like a patient, worn collection of half-legible opinions. The ink fades, the paper curls, but her handwriting remains steady, equal parts numbers and judgment. She turns a page, and the soft rasp of parchment sounds like justice being sharpened. You sip the last of your small beer and wait for your fate. Medieval tabs weren't written for convenience. They were written because no one ever had an exact change. Coins were rare, trust was cheaper, and memory served as the world's first accounting system. If someone drank often enough, they didn't pay each night. They accumulated character. The tavern keeper's mind kept score. She looks at you, then down at the ledger. Her finger traces a line. "Let's see," she says. "1 mug of ale, 1 bowl of stew, 2 refills, 1 argument you didn't start but encouraged." You open your mouth to defend yourself, she adds, "and 1 nap in the corner chair, premium seating." You close your mouth again. The sound of coins fills the air, a small metallic confession. Around you, other customers settle their mornings too. The farmer counts copper slowly, muttering a prayer to both God and arithmetic. The bard pays with a song, a delicate economy that's never balanced but somehow works. The soldier trades a favour, a promise to fix the tavern door that he didn't technically break, and the stranger, gone but not forgotten. She writes paid in silence, which, somehow, feels accurate. You hand over what little coin you have. She weighs it in her palm, then nods, the same way judges do before declaring a lenient sentence. "Your balance," she says, "is 1 coin, 2 lies, and a promise." You laugh nervously. She doesn't. Then she smiles faintly. Close enough. Outside, the street begins to stir, boots on cobblestone, cartwheels creaking, the echo of another day pretending to be new. Inside, the tavern feels older. The noise has softened to a kind of heartbeat. Chairs being stacked, mugs being rinsed, the occasional sigh of wood remembering laughter. The ledger lies open on the counter. You can see the names, real and invented, spanning pages like a social map of the whole village. Beside each, a tally, a symbol, sometimes just a note. Good man, terrible dancer. Too generous when sober. Pays eventually. It's not just bookkeeping, it's anthropology. In truth, taverns ran on trust more than cash. Everyone owed everyone something. One farmer supplied barley, another provided meat, the bard offered songs, the blacksmith repaired the hinges no one respected. The tavern keeper stood at the centre, translating human chaos into balance sheets of kindness and debt. It was the closest thing to bureaucracy the common world ever needed. She flips another page, runs her thumb down the margin and says softly, "Every number here is a story." You believe her. A tavern ledger wasn't about money, it was about continuity. Who stayed, who returned, who vanished. Each line a quiet proof that someone had existed loudly once. She closes the book gently, as if tucking in the past. The sound of the clasp is small but final. Then she says, "You'll be back." It's not a threat, it's a prophecy, and she's never been wrong. The bard strums a soft tune in the background, something nostalgic and tuneless, a melody made of leftover courage. The notes drift through the air, bouncing off beams, curling into corners, turning accounting into lullaby. The farmer, now debt-free for the morning, thanks the tavern keeper and leaves. The soldier follows, his boots echoing with the kind of rhythm that says he's already planning to return. You linger a moment longer. Leaving feels premature, like ending a sentence before the punctuation. You look around one last time. In daylight, the tavern is less a place and more a record, a fossil of warmth, preserved in smoke and habit. You realise that what people bought here wasn't just ale or stew, it was belonging on credit. The tavern keeper wipes her hands on her apron, glances at you with a kind of knowing affection. "You'll want the road east," she says. "Stay clear of the bridge. It's still arguing with gravity." Advice. Practical and poetic. The usual closing gift of hospitality. You thank her, she nods once, and the morning folds neatly around you. Somewhere in the distance, a bell tolls for midday, and even that feels like part of her schedule. You step toward the door but pause to listen. Behind you, the tavern resumes its rhythm, mugs, voices, laughter. Already the next story is beginning and someone new is writing their name into her book. Anyway, every world runs on credit. The smart ones keep the ledger honest. The kind ones remember the names. By the time you reach the door, the tavern has gone quiet again. Not empty, just thoughtful. The morning light presses through the cracks in the shutters and smoke curls upward in slow spirals, as if the room is exhaling its own memory. You pause in the doorway, hand resting on wood worn smooth by 100 other departures. The air smells the same as it did last night. Ale, fire, stew, and something faintly human, like sweat mixed with forgiveness. It's not pleasant, but it's honest. The tavern keeper is behind the counter, wiping mugs that are already clean. It's a ritual, not a task. The quiet rhythm of a life that never truly pauses. She looks up briefly and nods. You nod back. The ancient greeting of people who don't need words to agree that everything continues. The fire has burned down to coals, a small red galaxy tucked inside a circle of ash. You can still feel its warmth from across the room, faint but steady, like memory refusing to fade completely. It hums softly, and the sound blends with the slow breathing of the building. You realise this tavern isn't just a building, it's a pattern, a miniature version of the world outside. Every night it fills, every morning it empties. People arrive hopeful, leave tired, and in between they tell stories, trade lies, and spill something that stains. In that way, a tavern is civilization's simplest equation. Fire plus company equals endurance. You glance at the empty chairs. Each one holds the ghost of someone's story. The farmer's laughter, the bard's song, the monk's sermon, and the stranger's silence, still echoing faintly against the beams. Even the floor remembers, each scuff mark a tiny fossil of movement. A good tavern is a museum of bad decisions. And yet, without places like this, humanity would have nowhere to practice being human. You can still hear the faint hum of life outside, a cart rolling, a rooster bragging, a child laughing because someone dropped a loaf of bread. The same noises exist in every century because people never really change. They just keep inventing new reasons to gather near warmth. You take one last look around. The morning dust glows gold in the light, turning the air itself into slow motion. Somewhere above, the floor creaks, someone still asleep, still dreaming of dice or ghosts or turnips. The world keeps its small promises. You think back to the night before, the noise, the laughter, the smell of ale and smoke, the fragile chaos that somehow felt like home. If you look closely, every tavern contains all of history. There's politics in the corner, philosophy by the fire, economy at the bar, and art snoring upstairs. It's society in miniature, loud, contradictory, and surprisingly functional. Someone once said that civilization was built around three things: a hearth, a story, and something to drink from. You could add a fourth, a person willing to clean up afterward. The tavern keeper, polishing her mug in the quiet, might as well be the architect of humanity. You step closer to the door. It opens reluctantly, creaking like an old throat preparing one last sentence. The outside air greets you with the smell of earth and smoke, a mixture of yesterday and possibility. You take a deep breath. It tastes like survival, not fresh, but earned. Behind you, the tavern keeper calls softly, "Come back if the world disappoints you." You glance back and say, "So I'll see you soon." She smirks. That's what everyone says. You step out into the daylight. The town looks different now, less mysterious, more deliberate. Every building leans slightly, as if tired of pretending to be permanent. A few chickens patrol the street like they own it. You can hear a hammer somewhere, reminding everyone that work has opinions too. You turn back once more. The tavern door swings gently, the sign above it creaking in the breeze. It doesn't read its name anymore. The letters have faded into anonymity. But it doesn't need one. Every town knows which door belongs to warmth. You walk a few steps, then pause again. From this distance, the building looks ordinary, a smudge of wood and smoke among 100 others. But you know better. You've seen what happens inside. The noise, the heat, the arguments, the laughter, the constant rehearsal of being alive. And you realise something. Maybe history didn't survive because of kings or wars or miracles. Maybe it survived because of places like this. Rooms where people could argue safely, sing badly, forgive loudly, and start again the next day with slightly less pride and slightly more humanity. A world without taverns would still exist, but it would be very quiet and no one would stay long. You reach the edge of the street. The wind shifts again, carrying the faintest echo of a song, the bard's voice, still off key, still trying. It sounds distant, but not gone. The sun climbs higher, washing the town in pale gold. Shutters open, buckets clatter, and somewhere a baker curses cheerfully at his dough. Life begins again. The tavern will fill again tonight. The same jokes, the same arguments, different faces, same reason. To forget the world for a few hours and to rebuild it in laughter before dawn. Anyway, civilization survived thanks to bad beer and worse decisions. And you're part of the evidence. If you're still awake, congratulations. You've outdrunk history. If you're asleep, even better. You've finally found peace in the world's noisiest bed.